Hello, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. This is now the second part. I'm replying to Louise Clarke's video, which is a really, really good video, and I think everybody should watch it. This is now the second part. I'll put the link to the first video below, and to her videos, of course. She had 20 years experience with counseling crack cocaine addicts. She also has experience with targeting, gang stalking, and so on. And her videos are really, really good. So what this video is finishing off, replying to the points that she made, trying to, I think everything that she said is standalone, fine, exactly like she put it. I'm just trying to add things in that I have also observed, maybe it helps people. So, yeah, she said, one of the expressions I really liked was that what we're dealing with is essentially electronics, Daemonics, and Masonics. I think this is a great way of putting it, and I was answering the electronics bit, and I would like to finish that off and then reply about the Daemonics and the Masonics, because those are very important elements as well. So and I'll explain what I mean by that in greater detail, and also how to deal with it in my view. And of course, if you always have dissenting views, please put them in the comments below, because we need to hear from everybody. So okay, so the other thing she mentioned were dreams, that, you know, you essentially, I'm sorry, I'm just reading all my many notes. Yeah, the dreams that she mentioned. So there is, one of the things that now turns out is that they have a way to kind of read out the electric energy that our brains produce by some means. I'm not quite sure if they do it over implants or chips or these things that they I've also heard about stuff that you can swallow, and then, you know, it's essentially builds a little, not even like a chip, but a little thing that can amplify the electromagnetic signal inside your head that then can be read out. I mean, all sorts of stuff that they do. But one of the things that I've experienced myself, and this can be done with microwave beams as well, which is using microwave beams, you can do two things. Number one is you just put in a really intense beam that goes through your skull, and you can stimulate the hearing, essentially. So what you can do is beam voices into people's heads, so have pre-recorded messages or talk live, like into radio, and then instead of a radio picking up these waves, essentially the nerves and your ears inside, you know, bits of your brain will be the radio picking this up. So people can be made to hear voices, and this has been going on for absolutely decades. Now the patent for that, for the voice to skull technology, is public. I think it was from the 1970s. So, you know, it just shows you that all these people who have come forward and said we're hearing voices, and otherwise they were perfectly fine. It's not true that they were schizophrenic. No, they were the victim of a bunch of dickheads in the intelligence agencies. That's what it means. You know, and people have said, it's really odd what we're hearing. We hear people with dialects. Sometimes we hear the same person over and over. Sometimes they heard coffee cups being placed down, you know, as the recording equipment picked up, like newspaper rustling and coffee cups that these agents had lying around in the office and stuff like that. That's from the olden days. And people say that's really odd. I mean, yeah, you have a mental disease that, you know, essentially is a guy talking crap to you, I mean, while drinking coffee. That's a pretty odd, you know, disease to arise out of a random mental dysfunctioning or random chemistry going wrong in your head, right? So clearly this explanation didn't make any sense, but unfortunately most psychiatrists, because, you know, it seems like they are just most of the time just talking crap sometimes, they didn't pick up on this. They couldn't be bothered to look up the patent, and they don't know anything about, you know, physics. So they said, oh yeah, it's schizophrenia or paranoia or whatever. No, bollocks. It was the intelligence agencies all along running stupid little tests, and for the sake of a bullshit experiment, essentially destroy human lives, right? And that was voice to skull, still goes on. The bloody voice to skull, okay? And I'm not making this shit up. There's a TED talk by a guy called, I think, Woody Norris, who's an inventor, and who basically built his own little like panel, and you can see it in the TED talk, that he's just waving this panel around, And in that case, he says, oh, it's standing sound waves. Well, frankly, to me personally, it looks like an antenna array. So I would think it's not actually sound waves, standing waves, but actually microwaves being beamed into the audience's head. But sorry, I haven't validated his equipment, but I can tell you for sure that you can use do the same thing with microwaves. Now, that is sound into your ear, and that the intelligence agencies could do for like decades, by now over 50 years. So they're done with that, okay? Now, sometimes, well, according to some whistleblowers, Dr. Robert Duncan, the voices are computer generated, and they're trying to interfere like with your thoughts and have the voices lock onto the thoughts and have this like synthetic computer voice have a conversation with you and stuff like that. I mean, God, it just gets sicker and sicker and sicker what these people are doing. But what you also have these days is flashing images into people's skull. And yeah, they did that with me as well. So they did that with me already in Rotterdam, and then I woke up with a scar here, so maybe something is now growing into my optical nerve. Oh God, I mean, the shit just never stops. But one of the things that they do now, and they have done last night, for example, is that they shoot microwaves into my head, and when the microwaves go through the optical nerve, you can see light flashes. And that's what started happening a lot of the time. So I go to bed now, you know, after having tried to sue MI5 and, you know, in 2016, and being shot at and surviving an assassination attempt and so on. It's like, oh, now we're on to like flashing stuff into my head. Like, literally by now I so don't know who could possibly be doing that, right? God, idiots. Anyway, so this is it. So they now want to have like, you know, dreams, and they want to control our dreams. And the idea is that you go to sleep. Ideally, you don't know that it's these idiots doing it, and then you'll just have images flashed into your head, and they're trying to make your brain learn, you know, by flashing images in, and the brain reacts to it. You basically have a movie being played in your own head, and then they're trying to reprogram us that, yeah, we think that, I don't know, Theresa May is great, and we should all vote for Trump, or heck knows what they're trying to do. But it goes into that direction. So when you have really intense, vivid dreams, ask yourself, does that look like the dreams you used to have when you were a kid or at the time before your targeting started? Or does it literally look like someone is playing a freaking movie in your head? Because when they flashed images, and thank God it was just short time for me, it was just bullcrap, basically, you know? And it literally looks like a flash of an image into your head. You've got your eyes closed, and suddenly this image flashes up inside your brain. And you think, this just doesn't look like anything I've ever thought about before. It's not me. And at the same time, it's such utter like bollocks, you know? I mean, this was basically what was the telltale sign about the voice to skull, you know, when even if you're a psychiatrist, say 10 years ago, and you don't know about the patterns, doesn't it make you think that, you know, I mean, I, for example, heard one victim, and she was a black lady in the US, and she says, the worst thing about the voice to skull is essentially the racial abuse that you're getting. Like sexist comments, racial comments, and you think, doesn't that sound like a bunch of male dickheads? Really? I mean, does it sound like mental illness, or does it sound like the typical shit the average bully would do? And it turns out, guess what? These dickheads have been hired by the intelligence agencies, and they're basically just like, you know, talking into a microphone and sexually abusing people, you know? So you know how when people have anonymous accounts on Twitter, and they can be nasty, they can just say everything they want, be really like racist, sexually insulting and xenophobic, and just be disgusting, because they have the anonymity, right? They know that they can get away with it. So now imagine how abusive people turn if they can broadcast it straight into your skull, you know, with a microwave beam, and know that they can get away with it. Well, listen to the victims and hear what they've got to say. You know, they are being abused by these utter morons. But now we know that this technology exists. And now we'll take all the victims and we'll go back and we'll say, hang on, this sounds one-to-one, exactly like the technology. Who was the head of MI5 at the time? Who was the head of the FBI and the CIA at the time? That's on your charge sheet, my friend. these problems do not go away. We will go back and we'll say, how many decades have you abused these people with this bullshit? Really? And this is all going to be counted up. If these people think that they can escape, that's not how it works. And this is serious. So some of the bankers escaped, and a lot of the bankers escaped, in the financial crisis, but we're not finished yet. We are not finished. And one of the things that is certainly happening is that the turnaround time is getting faster and faster and faster, So in the olden days, sometimes took decades to have this uncovered. Now we're all on the case. Now we've heard about child sex abuse. We've all seen the financial crisis. We all know how corrupt these people are. And when someone comes forward and says this corruption is happening, most people I met have no problem in accepting that this is actually real. Ironically, if you talk to real people, they're like, oh yeah, you just have to say, well, it's a bit like the financial crisis, when all these people, these psychopaths just started like destroying people's lives. Well, it's like that, but it's now with the intelligence agencies, and people are like, oh, okay, yeah, well, of course, can happen. So it's not true that we are not believed. We are believed. We just have to, start doing this. But that's what I wanted to say about memories. Dreams, and they can do that with memory. They can kind of like try to interfere with our brains these days because they use fancy technology. So if you have really freakish dreams, ask yourself, is that you? Did you always have these dreams, or is it like something odd? And if it's something odd, I'm still trying to block out this stuff. And if they're beaming images into your head, then what you can do is literally, I do that quite a lot. If they get on my nerves, and they once tried to voice to skull, and they just had this really intense note played in my head. And I just use simple aluminium, and I take 4 or 5 layers, trying to leave no gaps, and I make myself a cap out of that by just wrapping my head. And that time with the note, I literally pushed this cap around until I just blocked it, and that was it. That was it. Done. Nonsense. So if they literally do this to you at night, then try to wrap your forehead or, your head, and remember they can shoot through your head as well, so they can come from behind. And if they really annoy you with this stuff, try sleeping with this stuff, just wrap your head, just to have some peace and quiet, Try that, or also try to build yourself some shielding like that and put it next to the bed. In the previous video I explained this is just a moving carton wrapped in aluminium foil with cellophane, put on top so that you don't breathe in the aluminium. So there are all these things, and bit by bit we'll learn how they're doing it, and we'll find, first of all, better ways to just block them out. But the long-term goal is not to keep blocking it out. The long-term goal is to get, literally down and grab the bollocks of Andrew Parker in the UK, head of MI5, and make him, have this whole bullshit shut down. Because it's embarrassing. It's freaking embarrassing what they're doing. And sorry, now it's getting ever more public, and you can't keep doing this freaking Muppet show, into eternity, as if we're all gonna listen to some idiots doing voice to skull until the end of our days. I don't fucking think so. So anyway, but that's where we are right now. We're still in the disclosure phase and getting through to people. So hang in there, but it's getting better and better every day because we get to know more and more about how they're doing these things. Then the thing about manpower, that it takes a lot of manpower to do all this stuff. Yeah, it does. But what they have built up is this huge gang stalking network. So these are all the intelligence agencies, informants and operatives and so on. And for example, in the UK, in the year 2003, the budget of MI5 doubled. This is in the papers, by the way. It was in the Guardian, so I'm not making this up. The budget doubled and the head count, so the staff, tripled. So MI5 was pretty big before, but now we've got 3 times as many people. And what that means is we've got all these they hired every last idiot in the land, I think. And those are the gang stalkers now, So that's why we see so many gang stalkers. And they've got nothing to do. They're too stupid to actually fight terrorism or any criminality. So they're just there harassing us. So that's basically what's happening. So the fact that it takes all this manpower shouldn't surprise you. It just shows you how much money and how many worthless idiots there are in the country, you know, doing nonsense. It's a lot. Oh yeah, and then people say, yes, they feel pain and so on. Yeah, we're still figuring out how they do the pain stuff. So they can give you pain by irradiating you with a beam through the wall. And I discovered that that's what they're doing. And I discovered it by putting my hand, for example, when they shot at my head, I put my hand in, and as I reached into the beam, I could feel the pain in my knuckles, you know, and I could literally just feel like, oh, that's where it is, you know. So they can do that, but then also I think they have a way, and this is what they're trying to do, to just, I think there's ways to, you know, it could be that they give us something that we absorb through our food that then kind of, you know, gets stuck in our brain and can be set off with beams. That could also be, you know, little metallic nanoparticles or whatever they're using. But either way, whatever they are doing, they have to kind of send the pain to you. And Louise Clarke is right that you can also have the memory of the pain. So if you're an MKUltra victim, you know, the memory of being beaten. And I think that's something worth looking into. However, that, if it's very, very specific, you know, then it might be actually an event that you remember. But if it's pain that just moves about, I would be more tempted to think that's actually a beam that they are kind of like moving around inside your flat. And it's hard for us to get our head around this concept that we can be behind walls, but for microwave radiation that hurts us, we are like in glass houses, you know. So you might climb into bed, you know, and just think, oh, I'm safe here. But actually the walls are transparent to this technology. So the beam that they shoot through, they can still hurt you inside. But you have to try. We literally have to go and eliminate it one by one, and every case might be different. So we have to figure out which bit is MKUltra and trauma from that, and which is actually a physical beam. So I still have to learn a lot about MKUltra. So this is where Louise Clarke comes in, because she's the expert on that. She's the expert counselor. So we really have to put the two together, and I can try to figure out the physicsy bit, and she has to figure out the other bit, the bits to do with psychology. And we have to bring the two together to know in what case what is what. So I'm still learning from her. And also, by the way, I said it in the previous video, if you just tune into this video, go and check out her her YouTube video, which is called Breaking No Speak Programming in MKUltra. That is really important. She says that, to summarize, she says it much better than me, but to summarize, you know, we have to speak out, anything that makes you speak out. Singing, humming, externalizing, vocalizing, getting in touch with the people around you, not just over the internet. Talk to real people. You have to use your voice cords. You have to actively create, speak, you know, write poems, be creative, but it has to come out of you, you know. You have to make things come out of you to break the no-speak, you know, programming that might have been done to you. And as she said, where you find resistance, that's where you have to push. So if you feel like there's certain things you can't talk about, those are the things you have to talk about, you know. Or if there are things that you feel you can't do, you're scared to make phone calls, or just make it a habit that you make phone calls. These were excellent tips from her, but watch her video because she does it much better. So then I want to get on to something else. So I have now dealt with all the electronics, and now she had these three things: electronics, demonics, and Masonics. And now onto the demonics. Because I'm an atheist, by the way, I'm an atheist, but I still think that there's good things in the Bible. Because even as an atheist, what I would say is that the Bible is an ancient text, right? So a lot of the problems to do with psychopaths and criminals, they are eternal. The people back in Jesus' day had them just as much as we have them today. You know, crazy Romans and miscellaneous people and pseudo judges just being rather corrupt. Well, that sounds very familiar, doesn't it? And a lot of the wisdom that people learned at the time, we can apply one-to-one today. So yes, do read the Bible. Find out the bits which are, you know, a lot of it has been falsified though. So you have to cherry pick the bits which are truly wise and the bits which got added so that we don't get too clever, you know. But find the bits, because there are good bits in there, and figure out what really helps you. So, and I'm talking as an atheist, but I think there's a lot of wisdom from thousands of years ago that we can use today. So, yeah, turning to Jesus Christ is certainly a good thing. Reading the Bible, yeah, it's the same applies also to the Koran, because the same thing applies to the Koran. And I do not buy into this whole like, ooh, Islam nonsense. No, let's take them seriously as well, because Islam and also the Islamic regions have thousands and thousands of years of culture, and they also have a lot of wisdom, which I think if you look into it will be very similar to the wisdom we have. So let's all read the books that we have access to, find out the good bits, find the bits that actually help us solve problems, and not the bits about killing others, because, by the way, those also happen in the Bible, you know, we can do away with that. And let's find out what works. But I don't think it's enough. So do that and do something else. Because if praying and reading the Bible in itself would be enough, then all the religious wars wouldn't have been so incredibly deadly and bloody. It's because, well, you can read the Bible and think you're guided by God, but you have to do something else. Otherwise, people with real weapons are going to kill you anyway, you know. So what I'm saying is, use the Bible and Jesus Christ as guidance, or use the Koran as guidance, but do something else. Don't kill people. Let's try to make our systems work, you know. Doesn't matter what you read, the Bible or the Quran, but you have to help us make things work. You have to help us fight corruption. And I think this is something that's come into all cultures. I mean, you can go to Tokyo, Beijing, Paris, or, you know, I don't know, Toronto, and you can ask people, like, would you like to have more corruption? And people say, no thanks. We have quite a lot of that here. We don't need to import it. So this is something we can all agree on, like lying, stealing, raping, murdering, defrauding, and all this sort of stuff, right? We all want to have less of that. So that's something we can agree on. So let's figure out how we're going to have less of that. It doesn't matter what religion we are or where we are in the world. So be guided by this, but then also do something else. So hang on. Yes, so in terms of concrete things, what to do, actually, Louise said some really good things. She says that, well, one of the things is to disconnect from the matrix. And sometimes I struggle to understand what people mean by the matrix, but I will now say what I think is the matrix. The matrix, I mean, and the matrix is big, you know, I mean, there's many aspects, and for me the matrix is the brainwash into a certain way of thinking and a certain way of doing things. You know, break free from that, find other ways of doing things, find creative ways, you know, different ways, make things better. So if you just, for me, being inside the matrix is that, okay, you do your work, we all have to go and work, and then you come home and you literally just zonk out in front of the television and you just watch television, whatever they decide the program is. So a step up from that is you don't turn on the television, you go on YouTube and you find what you want to watch. And you be ever more creative about what you want to find out about, you know. Maybe you, if you really want to watch something, you pick some other topic, you know. But get away from the commercialized programs. Look at other videos that people put on. Maybe, you know, look at people introducing new sorts of sports, ways to have fun, or ways to make things better, or ways to, I don't know, improve your home or help people. The ways to, you know, how to repair or heal scarring that we have inside us, you know, just like emotional scarring and so on. So there's lots and lots of things that you can do, and that is then not controlled by you anymore. It's just people putting out their own individual things, and you go after that and find out what you want. That's already getting out from the matrix. Then if you say, okay, but it's still just watching stuff on YouTube, well, then have really good comments. You know, help us put together the really good information. You know, that's what I think. And I think it's really, really good. One of the things that I find deadly is DVD box sets. I think if there's one thing that I would really, really urge everybody, it's just like, put down the box sets now, you know? Put it down, because it's hours. I mean, just look at the total number of hours you will devote to a TV series where someone else decided what topic you should be thinking about, how the people will be behaving inside the film, and essentially you'll be programmed to be thinking like them or behaving like them, you know, after you watched, I don't know, 16 hours worth of that stuff. So box sets, DVD box sets, I know you've got your favorite TV things, but just think about it. This is something that someone else created for you to just watch it, you know. There's real life going on. How about you try to find out about that, you know? Because I tell you, real life is like, I mean, art and films imitate real life, you know, not the other way around. So whatever exciting stories you might be listening to, there are even more exciting stories in real life. So find them. And then, yes, actually really, really important. I want, yes, sorry, I got sidetracked following my notes about the demonics. So my view about the demonics is, because people say that a lot, they say they use demons and demonics. I think I agree, but not in the way you might think. So I think, yes, they do use that, but I don't think these demons are real in that sense. But what's certainly real is the effect. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is essentially going back to this model. I think there's one video I did about capture and psychopaths. And it's essentially psychopaths rise to the top, you know, and then you have up here, you know, the psychopaths accumulate at the top. But psychopaths always want to control the people below them. And the way to control people is to assume more power than you have. And for example, priests have been doing that for ages. So in the old Greeks, you had these temples, and then the Aztecs had their priests, and we still have our priests. And some of these priests, especially I think the Aztecs, had these priests go pretty crazy, and they demanded like human sacrifices. And for me, that sounds like a clinical psychopath living out his power, right? Can I make the entire village kill people for me, you know? And then probably they also picked who they want sacrificed, who knows. And then what these clinical psychopaths will do is try to puff themselves up to look bigger. And the way to do that is to say, ooh, there are all these like, you know, demons, and I control them, and I can send them to you, and, you know, you can suffer, and there's nothing you can do because this is demons, and so on. I think that's what's being done. And especially when you have children and you like traumatize them with MKUltra and all the stuff that has been done by, you know, the government on a large scale, as far as I can tell. I totally agree with Louise about that. I think there have been government programs about traumatizing children in large numbers, and I think that's still ongoing. And nothing has been done to stop that, so it must be ongoing. But there, if it's little children latch on to stories, you know, fairy stories and so on. And essentially these demons and talk about demons is fairy tale stories for adults, so that the clinical psychopath can control you and keep you really, really afraid. Because if you think, oh, this pain is now being sent into my chest because it's demons and it's controlled by the Freemasons and there's nothing I can do about it, you're just going to try to bear the pain. But if it turns out that actually it's just an emitter that your dickhead of a neighbor has just placed next to his wall and is irradiating your bedroom, you know, a really good strategy might be to go over there, tell this guy that if he doesn't stop, you'll get his ass sued because you have his name down, right? If he doesn't stop, you put up metal shielding to reflect it back onto his ass, if you know where the transmitters are, you know. There's lots of things you can do. And suddenly there's lots of ways you can actually solve the problem and really kick these bastards' backside. So this is why I'm saying it's true that they use demonics in a sense. It's true because they do use these stories, but do not fall for that. Do not fall for it. It's true, especially if you're an MKUltra victim. You will, you know, suffer from this and be scared of this. But remember that most likely what it is, it's a clinical psychopath in your past are still trying to really scare you so that you don't just open your eyes and just like imagine you could go back to the old Aztecs and say, hang on, that priest up there, he's just a psychopath. He just got himself into that position because he realized he would have all this power if he becomes a priest, and he just likes killing people. He's essentially Jack the Ripper in the Aztec times. Are we all going to listen to Jack the Ripper, or are we just going to lock him up? You know? Or Harold Shipman, just imagine how much he would have loved being like an Aztec priest. So it's like, no, forget about the demonics. Just go like, yeah, fuck demonics. I want to find out where the psychopaths are, and I want them locked up. And I want to find out which of my neighbors is irradiating me. And when you're outside, one of the things that I experienced, because I experienced pain outside as well, after they turned it on, because they turn it on, so bit by bit. So within a year, very quickly, I realized, if I go to, lawyers, I'll be shot at in my home. If I take MI5 to court, they'll shoot me in the head straight after the court hearing in my hotel room. If I continue having hearings, they'll literally try to murder me on the motorway, and so on. And then as I'm trying to still come forward, horrible things are happening to me and my family, and now I'm also being shot at from cars outside. So, from my experience, I can tell you that certainly when I'm driving my car, I'm being shot at from little microwave emitters, like pulsed emitters that are really painful, that are placed in cars. So the intelligence agencies have fitted out certain cars of their little gang stalking teams that can shoot at you. And these cars catch up with me on the motorway and then just shoot me in the head. I had one car that was just kept shooting into the back of my head. So at first it was just like, just painful, like continuous beam. And then as it came closer, it actually turned into a pulse beam. And as the car was overtaking me, here, from here, this pulsing went along my forehead, or the side of my head, and then kept shooting into my forehead here, on this side, all the way until the car pulled in front of another car, and then it stopped. So from that experience, I can tell you for sure that they have these transmitters placed in cars. And I will repeat that under oath. That's truly what happened, So they have these little things everywhere. They shoot at us because, they figured out that certain frequencies cause pain and so on. And now they think they're also powerful. No, what they are is a bloody nuisance. And every single time this happens, note where you are when it happens. I think they can also put these emitters into handbags, into small suitcases, into rucksacks. And then when they are pointing them at you, you will feel pain. And if you have a chip inside your arm, like me, you had a chip shot into your arm, or somewhere else in a hospital, they just, put it in, then the software can find you and just keep shooting at you. It's basically that advanced, I think. And the key thing is that these microwave emitters are very, very small, so they can have them anywhere. So when you feel pain outside, please do not think that this is like demons possessing you. Think it's some bloody dickhead somewhere. Really, because that's, I think, what it is. And already you can tell, sorry about my language, I just get so angry. But, like demons are here like, ooh, all powerful, like, ooh, that's here. You're pretty helpless against demons. But when it's just some idiot, right, who can barely tie his shoelaces, who's just been given a microwave emitter by MI5, well, that's a different topic altogether. You can find out who this guy is, photograph his face, because we can find them over Facebook. We can find their faces, I promise you that. So photograph the people who you think are doing this in that direction. Which side of your body is the pain on? Have a look, who is there? Do they have rucksacks or something in their jacket pocket? Do you know them? Do you not know them? Try to figure out how the system works. And this is it. So my answer about demonics, yes, kind of yes, but also I think it's demonics in a sense that it's just some big thing that's blown up. But nevertheless, it can be scary, and especially if you had this hammered into you as a child. I mean, it's easy for me to talk because I wasn't terrified and traumatized as a child. But that's why I'm the strong one, and I'm saying this is how you have to think. We're gonna get their asses. Don't be scared. We're gonna get them. I'm just saying, don't let this demonics get to you. So much about the demonics. The other thing is also learned helplessness. This is exactly what it's about. And Louise pointed that out, and that's very, very good. Because we're all meant to. Learned helplessness is like this. if you have a cage, like a lab rat in a cage, and you electroshock the mouse or the rat, for example, if it goes to a certain part of the cage and it always gets an electroshock in that part of the cage, it will stop going to that part of the cage and it will be fine, and it will learn how to avoid that. But if you start randomly electroshocking the mouse and it can't figure out what the pattern is, what people discovered, it will just freeze. The mouse will be like, oh, I don't know what to do. Of course, right? That's what we are like as well. And this is essentially like mental paralysis. You know, it's like, it can look like depression, but it's not depression. It's because you got hammered, you know, negative impulses everywhere. It's like, that's not good, you're an idiot. No. And in the end, you're like, oh, I just want to sit here and just breathe and survive. And that's what they want you to be like, because then they can do whatever they want with you. So you do not become helpless. No more learned helplessness. And learned helplessness is insidious, because it's like, it's even worse than depression. It just paralyzes you, full stop. You don't know what to do. You don't want to do anything, because you don't consciously think, oh, because I will get electroshocked or because I'll have a negative experience. No, you just don't want to do anything, you know. And that's essentially what they want. They want you to just sit at home with your box sets and just do exactly what they want you to do, and then it's all fine. You know, no. You have to go out, you have to get your voice, you have to start singing, humming, writing poems, painting, be creative, generate stuff, generate YouTube videos, or comments, put comments below my video, whatever you need to do to get whatever's inside you. Please, no more YouTube comments because your handler told you to write some shit. Enough, right? And because I also get like computer generated comments, and I actually had like little things I tweeted about Spot the Bot, because I'll have literally the same person writing like within, you know, 2 or 3 minutes, like 18 comments on all of my videos. And in the YouTube Creator Center, you can just see all the comments in one go. And I just think, how did this person just write like 18 comments with like 600 words or like 800 words in it in just like 2 minutes? You know, they must be like super fast typers. No, they're computer bots. They are GCHQ bullshit generating machine, right? That's what they are. So no more of that, but I would love to hear from real people, you know, and then we can work out who the real people are by just reading this stuff. So no more learned helplessness. Get out there. Then, hang on, what else did I want to say? Oh yeah. Actually, Louise said something about, I forgot to say that. I should have said that under electronics. She said she was standing at a red light and her car was revving. You know, yeah, MI5 did that. Sorry, I think you're in the UK, Louise. I assumed you were in the UK. So if you're in the UK, it was MI5. If you're in America, it was the FBI or CIA. Yeah, and I can tell you that for sure, because what they did is they modified my car radio. So my car radio, I noticed that when I was driving it alone, that it would start playing like threatening songs that sounded like they were recorded in a studio by idiots. You know, it's like, ooh, we're watching you wherever you are. I'm like, yeah, okay. I wonder what you're trying to tell me. So this shit kept happening. And eventually, they also changed the display. So the radio station, which was Energy, suddenly had misspellings in them and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, God. But they did all sorts with the car. So it was, I think, yesterday when I was driving the car, it literally jolted on the motorway. That was terrifying. You know, it just gave a little like jump, like a little pony. You know, when the engine just sets out for a beat, it just jumped. So they did that. But one of the things that I can tell you is that I went to a court case called Philip Kerr versus MI5. And Philip Kerr is a businessman. And he had invited... I think he said he spoke to, I think it was Annie Mashon, one of the MI5 whistleblowers or MI6 whistleblowers. I think it was her, I'm not sure. But anyway, one of these high-profile whistleblowers. And that person confirmed that, yeah, you know, this like modifying car radios and modifying radios and then broadcasting pre-recorded programs. That's just what MI5 do, right? And like modifying cars and, you know, God, yeah, it's like one of their things that they do. So they're trying to scare you. And I think the way around that is to collect all this nonsense, to literally call them out. So now I've listed this thing of, you know, them making my car jump. I think you can do that by just, I don't know how they did that, but in principle you can have a little electronic thing that you can send a signal to, and then one of the pistons doesn't, maybe sets out for one, for a moment, and then you literally just have like the engine just doesn't stop, but just doesn't go on full blast, heck knows. But I mean, things like revving your engine must be technically kind of easy to do if you know what you're doing. And they must have their experts in, car manipulation, because they have to, do assassinations and stuff like that. But they also do this like little stuff to just get on our nerves. Doesn't matter, when that happens, get yourself a logbook, write it down, write a description down, because all of this is evidence. And the reason why it's evidence is because these tossers can never just keep themselves from trying out everything on us. Like I get hacking, my car radio's hacked, I get irradiated, I get the gang stalking, I get the subversion, I get like everything. But statistically speaking, the probability of one person experiencing all of these things is like, it's impossible. So it immediately means it's MI5, right? Only they can do hacking, electromagnetic irradiation, can control the gang stalking networks, all of these things. And actually, it tells quite a lot about, about what they have done if you just list everything that's being done to you. So maybe just get yourself a logbook, write it down. As soon as you've written it down, it's out of your mind. But when it comes to the court cases, and we'll read the charge sheet, this should be on there. Because what they are doing is domestic terrorism. This is a terrorism campaign. And that's not what they get paid for. And at the moment they can get away with it because people don't know. And the media is still trying to keep a lid on this. But sorry, the lid is just blowing. It's like trying to, when the dam's breaking, people are trying to, cover up the little holes, but more holes are opening up and water starts shooting, past them, past their ears. Now this is what's happening with the internet. So, don't get scared when this stuff happens with your car. It happened to me as well. And then Facebook, yes. Facebook, yeah, I completely agree with Louise's comment about Facebook. Yeah, I think they thought we'll all get on and then we'll be reading the little posts that they are posting, and we'll be listening to the bots that they program to write comments. But it doesn't have to be like that, because if you make a video, I just watch your video, Louise. I don't care about the bots, I just watch yours. And I can reply in a video, and I'm not a bot. And then we can stuff it to them. But Facebook is excellent, and YouTube and Twitter are excellent, because that's how I even got to know about you. That's how you could have helped, or did help me 2 years ago when I first watched your video. They couldn't censor that. So actually, I think it's when you think it through, and also maybe calculate it mathematically, you can show it's impossible to censor this stuff. Not when every single person in the world is putting stuff up on YouTube. Instead, what we're doing is we're learning really quickly how they're trying to censor us and find ways around it. But I think actually it is important. I am in the process of creating a Facebook profile and putting stuff on, because I think what they also want us to do is censor a little bit and scare us, and then they're like, oh, there you go. You can't say what you really want to say because we're going to censor it anyway, so no. And then we are all meant to go like learned helplessness and go like, oh, I can't really post what I want to say anyway. No. If they censor it, richly, we start complaining to them, then take another platform and complain about the censoring. If Facebook censors something, complain about it on Twitter. Or write YouTube comments saying, why was this censored? Here it is again. And post it everywhere. Because very quickly these people will become tired of it. For example, my Twitter, I noticed that my Twitter impressions, which were, going along normally, and then it suddenly, a hole appeared in it. So what I did is I took a screenshot of the hole and I posted it back on Twitter, at Twitter, asking, what the fuck is this? And lo and behold, 2 hours later, that hole had just disappeared again. It was all back to normal. Maybe they did some other censoring in the background, which I can't see. But anyway, now I posted it. Now I posted their pathetic attempts at censorship, And the more they're trying to do this, the more we'll, explore this. So I think the other way not to be learned helpless, do learned helplessness, is to literally go on Facebook anyway and use Facebook to complain about Facebook. I mean, that must really annoy them. And if they block your account, you go on another platform, you complain about having your account blocked, you know. And there's a new platform called Gab, I think, which is the an alternative to Twitter. I haven't tried it yet. So then we go there, and if that turns out to be rubbish, we go somewhere else, or then, you know, we start writing letters to each other. I don't know, we'll think of something. Then, oh yes, the Masonics, yes. Now, this is, I'll get into that. Yeah, I agree with you. By the way, can I just turn on the lights, because I think it's getting dark. Here we are. Okay, that's better. Yes, the Masonics. So, yeah, I think everything you said, Louise, is true. She said, well, it's Masonic rule, and above that is the Knights of Malta, above that is the Jesuits, and they are answerable to Lucifer. I agree with everything apart from the last thing. I think the Jesuits are answerable. I think Katherine Horton, the ex-general counsel of the World Bank, knows how this works. But I think the Jesuits are answerable to the Black Pope, and it's like the grey and the Black Pope above the White Pope, and it's essentially one big mafia, you know, loving in the end. So I think, again, when they say, ooh, they are controlled by Lucifer, it's again clinical psychopaths and criminals saying, ooh, you know, we derive our power from like some supreme being. No, I don't think so. I think you guys are deriving your power from like money you print and weapons you produce, you know. So I think this is it. So I agree all the way up. But yeah, the Jesuits are a problem. They do have all of these, the Masons, the Knights of Malta, and the Jesuits. By the way, there's this like talk by, there's this big like a charity event or something, like a big black tie dinner before Donald Trump was voted in, and you know they are pretending that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are totally different camps, and then there's this like black tie dinner, and they're both like there right next to each other, like having kind of like jokes, you know. To me it looks like one big crowd, you know, one big happy family. But the point is that behind Donald Trump there's one guy who's like, you know, blinged up with this like massive cross here. And I was looking at the video and I was like, isn't that the cross of Malta? I think that's a Knight of Malta right there sitting behind Trump. So as far as I'm concerned, after seeing that video, Trump is just in with the Knights of Malta, just as all the other people are. You know, and yeah, these people, they actually do exist. If you look carefully, you can see the Star of Malta, you know, or the Cross of Malta rather, and these people like literally wearing it like bling, yeah, we're, you know, in with the crowd. Crazy shit. But yeah, it's true. But now we are exposing them, and I think like 10 years ago, I don't think so many people would have talked about it openly, and now it's just everywhere. I mean, the only reason why I know about it is because every time I just type anything into YouTube, you know, half the videos on the side will be just all about these, like, all these male networking clubs, because most of them are all male, by the way. You know, the Masons still are. I think the Illuminati at the top are, although they might take some women. I have no idea. But, you know, lower down they take women, but at the top it's all men. What does that look like to us? Well, to me it looks like a male gang doing bullcrap, you know? That's what it really looks like to me. Does it surprise us? No. I mean, I know from school that the most idiotic and wanky blokes used to just gang together and try to become more powerful by just being in a gang, you know? I think that's... I don't want to be all anti-male, I'm not, because women can be, you know, pretty nuts too. But this is an effect that exists, so yeah, you have these, like, people who aren't really good enough to progress on their own steam, just ganging together and trying to be more than they are, yeah. So I think that's what we see, and the fact that we have, the Masons most certainly exist. And the other thing that I spotted, if you're going around sightseeing in towns, for example, in the UK, but also anywhere in Europe, have a look and look up where the Masonic lodge is in that part of town. And you can see that in Italy, in Germany, and in many, many other places. In the UK, have a look at the Masonic lodge, and then look at what's on the architecture. Because one of the things that I've seen in many, many, many Masonic lodges that I've just, sightseeing around Europe that I've seen was like little carved statues of nude little baby boys in suggestive poses. That seemed to be on quite a few of the lodges. So, given that they all seem to have that, it seems to be like nude, very young boys seem to be a theme. That's so prevalent, they actually carved it into stone and put it onto the front of the building. What does that tell us? So I think it tells us two things. Number one is, pedophiles have existed forever. Pedophiles always club together. These days they might use internet chat rooms. In the olden days they used Masonic lodges. Number one. Number two, also, that this system is ancient. These buildings were sometimes built in the 18th century, sometimes the 19th century. Oh, well, I think the ones I've seen were all 19th century and so on. But so this stuff has been going on forever. And so far, I haven't heard about anybody talking about that. The other day, I read a book, which was the diary of, he was, I think, some sort of like duke or something in 18th century France. And he tells the story of how he, because there was a war going on with Germany, so he took his troops to Germany, I think. And then they decided to just go and he had his like Masonic initiation ritual or something like that. And he was jolly chuffed with himself. And this is his diary I'm reading. And then he's like, oh yeah, and this person was there and that bit of royalty was there and they're all part of this Masonic gang. And oh my God, and he was just so excited about it. He just wrote that diary entry all in like code with abbreviations. And you just read it and you think, it's just a wanker, being made to feel special about himself. Right? That's what it is. And I think this is what the Masonic lodges did. They took like pathetic men and made them like feel great about themselves. Being a networking opportunity, business opportunity, and then they had all these extra things attached, like, oh yeah, here, look, young boys. And that was a sales factor. And then when it became unacceptable to rape young boys, it was essentially a blackmailing factor. So they got them in anyway, and then once they had this, they had maybe witnesses, and then these days probably film footage, you have a control file. So you have not just your friends in high places, you've got your friends in high places, and you've got a blackmailing tool on them. And I think this is why it was so jolly successful. And this is why this model, if you like, spread to all countries, because this was a way for psychopaths to draw in gullible men, I think, and to control them. And every psychopath needs to have their enablers. And I think what we're now doing is we're opening, we're pulling back the curtain and we're seeing this structure, the skeleton behind our society. This is how it has been run for centuries, And yes, I agree, the Masons are a great big part of this. But it's not just the Masons. I think there were other clubs, and essentially for me it's the same category. I don't care if they call it the Masons or Scientology or whatever. As soon as you start organizing people into structures and telling them what to do in this really rigid hierarchy, and bring in like extra fancy stuff and pomp and circumstance to like razzle dazzle them, for me it's the same stuff, So, and I think all of these are probably financially related at the top, So yes, I think the Masons are a big part. And yes, the Masons, and I think that arises out of their traditional, usage of young boys that seems to be inscribed in the architecture. I think it is through that they also caught on to how do you control young children, how do you bind them, traumatizing them. And what happens to a young child when they are literally raped by an older male? Well, I think they get very scared on a fundamental level, and I think they become pliable and controllable later on in life. You know, this primordial fear of authority will then stay with them, and then a psychopath has created a useful enabler, a useful slave, you know, forever after. I think this is what's happening. Yeah, and these Masons are still around. There are still Masonic clubs, and what we have to do is just expose all this stuff and literally ask. And at some point we have to go up to these Masonic lodges and say, so what do you get up to these days? I mean, why are you not admitting any women? You know, maybe you should admit some women, you know, tidy up the place a bit, because we all know what happens when, you know, guys are left to their own devices for a very long time, you know. Yeah, they always come up with some nonsense. So I think everything that Louise said is correct. I've seen like lots and lots and lots of evidence to support that. And yes, the Masons are involved in mind control and mind control of young children. I just find it hard to work out if these days it's, you know, it's like a chicken and egg problem. Are the Masons controlling mind control and doing this as a service to the intelligence agencies, or are the intelligence agencies controlling the Masons? I think at some point it doesn't matter. I think that both of them are so grown together, and I would assume that the heads of the intelligence agencies are also quite high up in the Masons, and they try to control them as well. I think this is how it is. But I think the point is to just open, you know, the door on all of this, turn on the lights and say, hey guys, so what have you been doing all these years? It doesn't matter if it's the Masons or if it's the Secret Service. Like, what's so secret about it, right? Because I think the only reason why it's secret is because it's criminal. That's why. So I think that was an awesome video that Louise Clarke made. I think well, I was just trying to add my own point and actually underline what she was saying, but watch her video, because you know, she makes many more points I haven't actually replied to. So please, you know, get onto this topic and also take us all seriously, because what we're saying now, you hear it from two different sources, and I completely agree with everything that she says. I think she is right. So now you've heard it from her, now you've heard it from me. So, you know, I think there's something you should get onto and have a look into. Anyway, so I've waffled for long enough. Thank you so much, Louise, for actually pointing me to that video, and really keep up the good work, because we need people like you. And oh, actually, sorry, just before I close, I should have put it right into the beginning, because I think I have, yeah, I think I've lost something that I wanted to say. Yes, you mentioned, oh God, yeah, I should have said it straight away. You mentioned two people. One of them is Charles Seven, and the other one is the lady from Cambridge University who's also gang stalked, and I think you mentioned she's got voice to skull. Could you possibly put me in touch with those people, with the two ladies? Because if you want to have this exposed, and if we want to get back to the rule of law, which is I think what we should do, we should reclaim our police, instead of just saying, oh, the police, it's like Facebook, you know. They want us to think, oh, Facebook, don't make use of Facebook, we'll censor you anyway. And they want us to do the same thing with the police, like, oh, don't go to the police because it's not going to help you. Don't go to the courts, they're not going to help you anyway. And I get a lot of comments like that from bots, essentially saying, oh, the police are never going to help you. And if I hear something 3 times, I assume that the opposite is true. You know, I think we have to go back to the police. The police have to understand what we're about. I have posted an incident where the police was trying to, you know, or the police was used for a setup to intimidate me. And then what I did is I just talked to the police officers, and I just said, do you even know something about microwave weapons? And he was just like, no idea. And then I said, hey, I think you should know something about it, because it looks like this. And I showed them this blue panel, and I said it costs like 200 quid and you can commit the perfect murder with this. You can shoot at police officers with this. You bothered? And suddenly you can see their eyes go big and think, okay. And I said, please Google this stuff yourself, because clearly your superiors are not going to tell you about it. And then the police officer, the senior police officer said, really? You're telling me that if I Google microwave weapons, I'll find stuff? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, you will find stuff. And he was genuinely surprised. So they do not know. And it's not true that the police all think, oh, we should all be just shot to pieces and stuff like that. That's what they want us to think. So I would really like to have all of you ladies somehow, you know, I'm not saying on my team, I don't want to bind you to me or something, but I want you all to help, please, because I'm just looking at you, Louise, you are a psychologist, I'm a physicist, the lady from Cambridge is a lawyer, and Seven is a media person who is just bubbling with creativity. I think if we put all this together, right, we can have somebody who can help us just brush up the message, put it out there, and isn't this like a heck of a story, right? I followed the lady from Cambridge. I looked at her website. I also followed the case of Seven, and that was just spectacular. I mean, really, what happened to her. But then again, you know, we all have to just move on and just get on to the next project. And I think here, there's something, this is about mankind, this is about the future of humanity. And I think we should work together and actually bring our skills together and, you know, try to do something together to move forward. Because I think we could all do great things. So if you could possibly put me in touch with Seven, and I forgot the lady, you know who I mean. It's, I think it's, what was her name? But she was, I think she had a website, Gang Stalking at Cambridge University, or Targeted Individual at Cambridge University, or something like that. Please put me in touch, and please, let's all just get together and think about what creative stuff, like, let's not be owned by them, but now that we know about these topics, let's just think about what we can put together to educate people, reach out, get to the courts, tell the police, and move forward about this. Thank you so much for listening, and sorry about having made such a long video. So bye for now.